This video is my first attempt to take a look at the positional groups that are available in the NFL draft. I'm going to focus on the edge defender group, first of all, because I think it's very high quality, number one. There's something for everyone here in this draft, and I've got a hierarchy here of guys to talk about. I'm not sure that I'll get through everyone on the list. I am obviously using the website draftsignal.pro that myself and a number of other people created in the last 5 to 6 weeks. Talked to multiple people on my channel about it and tried to promote it as much as possible. It offers an easy way for me to try to create this content as opposed to making standalone graphics in order to present this stuff on my channel. So the way that I'm going to break this up is obviously talk about the first two guys, the best two guys from a talent and potential standpoint, and that's Rueben Bain and David Bailey, and then kind of chunk this up into tiers or groups of players as I see them so far. So the first guy that we'll get going here is obviously Rueben Bain. He's the most, I think, maybe controversial, if you will. Also the guy that we've received the most evaluations of on our website. I will tell you, first of all, I love the player in the film that I watch. And 3 times now I've gone back to watch the film and see if I can confirm or maybe deny things that I thought previously. And in each case, I came away from the film with every bit as high an evaluation and thought of his talent level from a Ravens standpoint. Just don't see any way that he's there at 14 to select, despite the shorter arms than maybe people expected. And I certainly don't think that he gets past pick 14 if, in fact, he is there at that time. If you're tracking along with this video while it premieres or watching it later, the website is draftsignal.pro. It's pretty easy to navigate. You can just go to the top right corner, go to players, go to the player sort function, edge, and then find whatever player you want to. In this case, I'm talking about Rueben Bain. The 2 highlighted evaluations that we have by Charles Bowie, who's Ravens Blitz on Twitter, and Coach Evan Siptatali. Looks like we're missing an L there in his tagline. They both had similar opinions of Bain that I do. We've provided film to try to give people an idea of what we're talking about. First of all, if to use a combat sports analogy, knockout power in his hands, meaning whatever he touches, he destroys. Coach Evans talked about his ghost move in pass rush situations. I'm talking about or referring to against the run as well. Rueben Bain, when he is able to utilize any type of hand move, it's instantaneous, number one. It's very powerful. And in fact, there's been some times where he's knocked offensive linemen, tight ends, or running backs to the ground completely with just a simple hand swipe, a rip, or a club. I think he's professional level as far as the athleticism, the burst and explosiveness off the line. Him and Mesidor, to have them on the field, on the team at the same time, of course they benefited each other. Sometimes Bain got the pressure and Mesidor cleaned things up, if you will, for the sack, or vice versa. I am not nearly as concerned about the arm length as many others, but I recognize there's people that, well, I know 2 people who said they just took him off their board completely for their team. I'm not sure how you can justify that, given the film is so impressive, number one, and dominant. Him and Mesidor in the college football playoff were a dynamic duo, and I think the Suggs and Woodley comparisons here fit perfectly. This is a guy that, as a Ravens fan, if we were able to grab him at 14, I would think the similarities to 2022 with Kyle Hamilton are obvious. I don't think that there's really much chance of that occurring, to be honest with you, and that's why I don't really entertain it at all. I see him as a guy who will rush to the outside generally. He's going to be a 9 technique, an outside linebacker / defensive end. Maybe he spends more time with his hand in the ground in a 3-point stance. I think he can play out of either one, in my opinion. The next guy that we'll talk about, and I'm kind of breezing through these top players because I don't think from a Baltimore standpoint or even Detroit or Seattle, there's really any reason to talk about these guys who simply will not be there when those teams make their first-round selection. David Bailey, lightning-quick athleticism, and in my opinion, a guy who consistently wins and threatens with upfield rushes. The inside spin move, I think, is where you kind of start to get these Abdul Carter comparisons. Maybe Carter's a little bit bigger, thicker, if you will, after a year in the NFL, but superb athleticism. I think that one of the evaluations that's on our site that I think I was most interested in is when Amari Brown, who's a Seahawks fan and does a lot of content on Twitter about that, talked about Bailey being able to tilt protection schemes, essentially force teams to allocate a running back or a tight end as an outside chip blocker before releasing into the route. I think David Bailey presents that from day one. I do not get the same sense of, I do not have the same opinion as so many others who have kind of started to downgrade or push him down their board. In my opinion, David Bailey's off the board by pick number 4. If he's not, as a Ravens fan, you probably start getting super, I think, anxious or worried that a guy like a Bailey or even a Rueben Bain could be there for Kansas City at 9. Or worst case scenario, the Bengals at 10. Just like every player that's on our site, there's film down at the bottom to kind of justify some of the evaluations. You can click play. It's all color coded. In fact, Jen did an amazing job coding this stuff as far as attractiveness and elegance. The buttons are red to match the color scheme for Texas Tech. The next tier, if you ask me, of players, I'm going to include 3 guys there together, and that's Akheem Mesidor, TJ Parker, and Cashius Howell. Of course, guys like Zion Young and Keldric Faulk could certainly be selected in the first round and or selected before Mesidor, Parker, and Cashius Howell individually. I'm trying to package players together by skill type or maybe play style. The TJ Parker inclusion with Mesidor and Cashius Howell kind of is where that breaks down. I don't think Parker presents with the same variety and tightness of moves as Mesidor does, nor is he as quick off the edge and from an outside move standpoint, an upfield rush standpoint as a Cashius Howell. For Mesidor, what I really like is the pre-installed pass rush moves. And whether he goes to Baltimore, Detroit, or anyone else, I think you're getting a guy that you can put on the field immediately on 3rd and 6. And he can check off any box as far as what you as a defensive coordinator or defensive staff, what move you want a player to execute. Him and Bain were not just fantastic as a duo in 2025, but stacked together, meaning aligned on the same side. Coach Evans pointed that out in a video that I premiered on my channel Sunday evening, and I thought it was a really astute point that Mesidor and Bain, when they were lined up together, were 2 guys that terrorized, I should say, offensive linemen. Mesidor, yes, he's older. Interestingly, I just found out, I believe this is correct, feel free to let me know if I'm wrong, that he actually started his career as a defensive tackle, perhaps an undersized one, and then went to Miami, had a successful season, then the injuries began. Now he's a 24-year-old guy in the draft. I think he'll be 25 at the time of his selection. I expect him to go late in the first round, somewhere in the 20s. On the site, we've got evaluations from Will Rock and myself. And again, film of the different types of rushes that Mesidor focuses on. I did a Kyle Van Noy player comp, and I know that some would say, well, I'm not a big fan of that. First of all, I feel like he has much better pass drops and awareness than people may be aware of. And there is actually film of him doing so, dropping out and getting really good leverage on receivers. I think he's receivers and or tight ends. I think he's a very pro-ready player from day one. He will not necessarily need much instruction on pass rush moves like a Zion Young or a Keldric Faulk, or even to a lesser extent guys, a tier or 2 below, like a Gabe Jacas or a Derek Moore. In my opinion, Mesidor belongs where he is from a projection standpoint near the end of the first round. One of the guys that I think draws a lot of different opinions is TJ Parker. When you see him at his best, long arms, very athletic, able to fold or jump to the inside on run concepts to him. Really fantastic, I think, at standing or stacking up tight ends. You understand why I feel comfortable with these 2 comparisons here that I put in, because he's got great length, and the reactions with his hand usage is it's reminiscent of high-level, championship-level professional boxers or MMA fighters. Instantaneous reactions and usage of his hands to try to get defenders off of him or clear them on a pass rush on his way to the quarterback. We've got multiple evaluations on the site, one by myself, one by Dan Vian's Seahawks Forever podcast, who's done a great job of submitting stuff to us. I'm not going to read those out to you. You're welcome to do those on your own time. And the 24 film for TJ Parker was, if he had come out after 24, you're talking about a top 10, top 12 pick, in my opinion. The 25 film just doesn't look the same, but you can say that about multiple guys on Clemson's defense. Avion Terrell, still going to be a first-round pick, or maybe early second-round pick, but I really like his film. That's A.J. Terrell's brother, in case you don't know. But Peter Woods, all of those guys, I don't want to say underperformed, but their stats and their impact at times was underwhelming in 2023. Clemson's defense was not a whole heck of a lot of fun to watch, to be honest with you, in my opinion. I do like the player and the potential more than I do the film from 2025 because I'm keeping in mind what he was able to accomplish in 2024. I think TJ Parker in the right place could get off to a great start in the NFL. And what I mean by that is if he was to end up in, let's say, Seattle and be able to get on the field with some of the other, fantastic pass rushers and run defenders that they have, depending on the systemic fit and the opportunities that he gets, I think TJ Parker could hit the ground running in the NFL, even though watching the 2025 film, to be honest with you, was a heck of a grind for me to try to get to. Finally, Cashius Howell, someone who at this point has, I think fallen or dipped down draft boards despite, it's really otherworldly burst off the line. I think if you put all of these guys on the line with a snap count, meaning a football and a quarterback making a snap count, he's the guy that's going to get upfield the quickest, along with Bailey and Bain. I would put him in that category as far as his get off. And then the ghost move to get upfield it's his best move. You can tell that, whoever taught him or whoever was coaching him at Texas A&M from a positional standpoint and the coordinator, they were giving him moves that fit or suited his body style, his arm length or lack thereof, if you will. Tremendous athleticism, which is noted across both of the evals that we have on the site, as well as the film that's down here. As an aside, we're trying to add longer length film to the website, so it's not just one play. I'm not going to click on it for obvious reasons, but you guys can. We're trying to add longer film, so as you do click on a play, you can see 6 or 8 or 10 reps instead of just one. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit here. And again, we're trying to evaluate or talk about the entire position, the edge group. I'm utilizing the website draftsignal.pro to do so for obvious reasons. I want to expose or at least try to heighten people's awareness of the site and hopefully usage of it. So I'm going to package 3 guys together here. Well, I guess 2 that really belong as a pair or a duo. Zion Young and Keldric Faulk. Guys that I don't think have as pronounced or as advanced pass rush moves at all, but they've got great size, frame, length, and weight. I think Faulk is, a little bit heavier. I think Faulk's in the 276, 278 range compared to Young. It looks to me like Young is going to, be a guy who fills out pretty quickly. I feel really confident in these 2 player comps here, JPP and Charles Anamehu, who played for the Chiefs. As a 22-year-old guy, really great against the run, got a great motor, gets to the football, very violent with his hands, albeit not accurate. To me, he would be like a guy, to use a combat sports analogy, who's got great power, but maybe isn't accurate, number 1, or number 2, swings and misses a lot. You can, go the Deontay Wilder route if you want to. I do have an evaluation of him on the site. Great physical tools and athleticism. Okay, I think he's exceptional against the run. Having said all that, I wonder about the pass rush potential, and I think that the team that takes him is going to be one that already has pass rusher addressed. I do not think Zion Young is a guy you draft as a primary pass rush threat in year 1 or year 2. Over time, could he develop? I'm sure that he will. He's got great athleticism. He seems to have exceptional pursuit to get to the football. Some positional versatility. I did not like his inability to counter the bull rush, meaning he relies on the bull rush so often, at least in the games that I watched. Keep in mind, I can't watch every single game from 24 and 25. Not there yet as far as my availability to do this and only this as any source of revenue or income. But I think Zion Young needs at least 1 counter to the bull rush, if not 2. He's got the violence, he's got the length, the strength. In the bull rush, I did see it overwhelm guys at times. Having said that, I saw multiple reps where he attempted a bull rush and pretty much got stonewalled. I'm just not on the same page as so many other people who project him as a late first-round pick and someone that you can't pass on if you're in the teens. In my opinion, guys like Zion Young are available in drafts pretty much every year with the length and the athleticism. I don't see a guy with him or with Keldric Faulk who's going to overwhelm you with pass rush moves or impact, especially earlier in their career. A little bit heavier guy, Faulk, number 1. Number 2, he played more on the inside, not a D-tackle, positional designation, 4-eye, which is somewhat different. Great arm length, as noticed, number 1. Number 2, he's only 20 years old. I kind of like the 24 film more than the 25 film. Got two different evaluations from Detroit Lions guys here. Easy from Woodward Heavyweights, and then Will Rock from Detroit Football Journal, and also Rocked on Lions. And we've got just sacks for Faulk in 24 and 25. I really struggled watching the film of him in 25. I did not see an explosive player. I did not see a guy who gets to his pass rush move as quickly. In my opinion, if he's drafted in the first round, which he probably will be, on 3rd and 6, he'll either be off the field or he'll be lined up inside. And even then, I'm just not sure. In year 1, at least, year 2 and year 3, projecting forward, you're probably going to get more impact. But I do not think he compares favorably to a guy like Trayvon Walker, who came out of college, 3 or 4 years ago, and similar build, maybe not nearly as long with arm length. I don't necessarily know that to be sure, but Trayvon Walker played a lot of 4-eye, which is a B-gap responsibility for Georgia, which limited some of his pass rush opportunities. The same thing existed from the film for Keldric Faulk of 2025 at Auburn. But I don't see the same level of explosion, nor do I see precise, accurate, and quickness of hand strikes with Keldric Faulk. Everything seems to happen a little bit slower or take longer. Maybe that is just lack of time on technique or time on task over the course of years. Perhaps he'll grow into this comparison here. Carlos Dunlap, I think you've got the build, the frame, the size, the willingness to play unselfish football. The Trayvon Walker, I probably should have included that. Trayvon Walker comparison, or the reason why I bring it up is because Walker in college, one of the things I noted was he would read his keys. He was not selfish, meaning he reacts to the tackle or the guard lined up to his inside. He doesn't cheat and just run at the quarterback trying to chase sacks. The same thing applies to Keldric Faulk. I think that NFL teams and front offices and coaching staffs have probably identified that with a greater degree of accuracy and ability to describe it than I did. My point is, I think you've got, at 20 years old, a very mature player who responds to his keys very well, that teams probably feel like they can mold into the player that they foresee him to be 2 or 3 years from now. All right, the next tier or group of players that I'll talk about, and it's really going to be 3 guys from the Big Ten. I'm going to group or lump them together. They may actually be the final group, but I'm going to include Malachi Lawrence, even though I think he kind of sticks out a little bit. So let's do this in order, I guess, alphabetically. We're obviously talking about Derek Moore of Michigan, Gabe Jacas of Illinois, and Dennis-Sutton of Penn State. We'll talk about Moore here first. I think you can kind of equate all 3 of these guys together in that, number one, they're very physical. They got great strength. I think Moore and Jacas are a little bit more heavy-handed than Dennis-Sutton. Sutton seems to me to be a little bit quicker to the outside at times. I do really like Moore and Jacas's games. As it stands with Moore, he's not too old. He's 23 years old, and I think he's very strong, number one. When he deals with offensive tackles, whether it's in the run game or the pass game, he doesn't get shocked at all. My projection for him is, somewhere in the 50 to 70 range, but really probably more so this range here, 45 to 55 between the Ravens, Lions, and Chargers. You got the Michigan connection, obviously, right, as number one. Number two, the Ravens and Lions both are looking to draft other positions in round 1, most likely. So, and in fact, edge defender, they may go edge defender early. If they do not, 45 and 50 is where they're going to be trying to find guys like a Gabe Jacas, a Derek Moore, a Dani-Dennis Sutton, or maybe even a Malachi Lawrence. I separate him a little bit, Malachi Lawrence. I do like one thing about Dan Vienne's evaluations that he gave us, which is that it includes pass rush win rate. I don't refer to that. I generally am just watching the film and then typing a couple of paragraphs about what I saw. Moore, to me, isn't a spectacular athlete, but he's extremely physical, great pursuit, just like along the same lines as a Zion Young, perhaps not the same length, if you will, as far as measurements. I like Moore's game. I get the sense from him that he's going to be a guy that produces more than maybe some in the NFL than maybe other players that are drafted ahead of him. I like him a little bit more than I do Gabe Jacas, even though he's a player that I think is interesting and has been a little bit underrated or perhaps under-discussed in this draft. Extremely powerful, very young. You can see that he's 21 years old. And I like his player comp, DeMarcus Lawrence, because he's someone who looks like, to me, on pass downs, he could be a real problem kicking down to the inside. The Seahawks did that a ton with DeMarcus Lawrence this past year, to great effect. They obviously had Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams as well. Sometimes they would invert the pass rush and kick Williams out and DeMarcus Lawrence in. Do that to play some games. I like Jacas' physicality, but very similar to Zion Young. He could have almost been grouped in there with Young and Keldric Faulk. The reason why I didn't do that is I think more projections have Young and Faulk as first rounders, late first rounders, whereas Jacas early to mid second rounder like Dan Viennes has into the third. I think he's got real upside. I think he's a very unselfish football player. I think he was a great wrestler in high school, has an extreme core strength, even bigger offensive tackles, 320, 330 in the Big Ten. Jacas, very similar to Derek Moore, was able to stand his ground, particularly on base blocks, even a couple of double teams. He's able to hold his ground at the point of attack. I think his reactions in the pass rush, he's got better counters, I think, than Derek Moore at times as far as like the initial move that he's using. I don't think either one of those guys, in my opinion, offers the same pass rush quality as Dennis-Sutton. The difference here is, though, even though I described Dennis-Sutton as very rugged, is that I think those two players are a little bit stronger perhaps at the point of attack. But Sutton, big, 6'5", almost 6'6", in fact, a heavy player, almost 270, excuse me. I compared him to Boye Mafe. That may sound a little bit unflattering. You have to remind yourself, I'm a big Boye Mafe fan. I do think that the Bengals overpaid him a little bit. I think this is one of the players that looks like an exceptional pick in round 2, or maybe in some scenario he makes it to the early part of round 3. I don't think so. I think all three of these guys, Jacas, Moore, and Sutton, could be interchangeable as far as where they're selected. That 45 to 55 range looks like the sweet spot to me. Well, let me put it to you this way. I hope it's the sweet spot so that the Ravens and the Lions can possibly grab one of these guys, if not two, meaning the Ravens draft one and the Lions take one of them as well. I think that Sutton and Malachi Lawrence probably could have been grouped or packaged together as a tier or duo in this draft presentation. When I said in the lead-in that there's something for everyone, that's what I mean. Dani-Dennis Sutton, 8.5 sacks each of the last 2 years. I see far more organic wins on his film and Malachi Lawrence's film, meaning just basic one-on-ones with offensive tackles, than I did with, like, for example, from a Ravens perspective when they drafted Adisa Isaac 3 years ago at this point. A lot of his 9.5 sacks his final year at Penn State was created by the Manny Diaz scheme. A lot of chaotic rushes, very Mike McDonald-esque, if you will. Dani-Dennis Sutton, more organic wins, in my opinion, than Jacas and Moore. A wider variety of pass rush moves, I should say, that have been presented or you see show up on film. Very similar to Malachi Lawrence. I think those guys have got a similar build and frame. Sutton a little bit bigger. Personally, I'm partial to Sutton. He's a Maryland guy. Actually saw him play in high school. Been rooting for him for years at Penn State. I think he probably is taken after Malachi Lawrence, meaning Sutton. It just makes me, I do wonder, however, if there's some team out there who doesn't look at the pass rush acumen of Sutton and Lawrence, as well as the production, and choose to take those guys sooner than a lot of us project. The 45 to 55 range, I think, fits for Jacas, Moore, and Sutton. I'm not sure for Malachi Lawrence. I get the sense that he's going to be a little bit sooner, early round 2, but it wouldn't surprise me, as I noted in my eval, if he's taken later in round 1 for some team to try to get that fifth-year option for them. We've got some film of him down at the bottom, not as much because it just wasn't available, to be honest with you. I think this is a spectacular talent, Malachi Lawrence, and if you were to rank these guys, some people are going to have him 8th or 6th as the edge rushers for the 2026 draft. No one's going to have him above Bain or Bailey, or Mesidor, maybe even Zion Young, Keldric Faulk, or T.J. Parker. My point is the depth is here in this draft for the edge defender position. It's very rare and unique, in my opinion. More time has been spent on scouting the edge rushers for me at least, than ever before. And when you get to the entirety of the group, you've even got players who offer you something from a pass rush standpoint, even though perhaps they're limited against the run. I really like Joshua Josephs Romello Height, both of those guys pass rush demons in college, even though Romello Height, I think, is 24 years old already. Max Llewellyn, maybe to a lesser extent than those guys, but he's got the best spin move. Llewellyn from Iowa, that is. He's got the best spin move of any edge rusher in this draft, other than, perhaps David Bailey. I really like Caden Curry, even though he's got super short arms. He measured the shortest arms at the Combine this year, but the film is fantastic and a lot of fun to watch. I think he's a guy that's going to be, a 5th or a 6th round draft choice and possibly surprise people down the road. Vincent Anthony from Duke is another long athlete that I could see 5th, 6th, maybe 7th round, who could surprise people over the course of the career. I think the edge defender spot here is extremely deep. I will focus on 3 of these guys in a separate standalone video in a little bit more detailed fashion than I did here. The idea here for me is to talk about and utilize some of the research that I've done in creating the site, along with about a dozen other people. I can't take credit for it all myself. Again, the site is draftsignal.pro. This happens to be the player function board, which is my favorite page because you can look at these slices of players that I intend to change about every 72 hours or so to give a different look or a different flavor to the site. But in any case, if you guys enjoyed the video talking about the edge defender position, perhaps only on surface level, but all of it is based upon A, the film work that I did on this position, and B, some of the work that other evaluators or collaborators have done for this website, draftsignal.pro. If you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number 1. Number 2, if you have any comments about the players and the evaluations that I gave of them, feel free to let me know in the comment section. Appreciate you guys' time.